The stars looked different out here. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the Spirit of Earth, and watched the swirling colors of the veiled nebula through the main window. He had been in space for 15 years, but this place still made him feel small. The nebula stretched across the darkness like a giant cloud of purple and blue, hiding secrets that no one had ever discovered. Jake was a tall man with gray hair at his temples and tired eyes that had seen too much. He commanded a crew of 40 people on a ship that was neither big nor small. The Spirit of Earth was an exploration vessel, built to go where others had not gone before. Today, they were just passing through, heading back to human space after 3 months of mapping empty star systems. Lieutenant Sophie Blake sat at her station, her fingers moving across the glowing controls. She was young, barely 30, with bright eyes and a mind that worked faster than anyone Jake had ever met. Sophie's job was to listen to space, to catch signals and messages that flew between the stars. Most days she heard nothing but static. Today was different. "Captain," Sophie said, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of the bridge, "I'm picking up something strange." Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of strange?" "A signal. Very weak, but it's there. The frequency is nothing I've seen before." Sophie frowned at her screen. "It's coming from deep inside the nebula." Chief Engineer Danny Torres looked up from his own console. He was a short, solid man with dark skin and worry lines on his forehead. Danny always worried about something. Right now he was worried about this. "Captain, I don't like this," Danny said. "The veiled nebula is dangerous. Ships go in there and don't come back. We should report the signal and let someone else check it out." Jake stared at the nebula. He knew Danny was right. The smart thing to do was to mark the location and move on, but something in his chest pulled at him. The signal was a distress beacon. Someone out there needed help. "How far in?" Jake asked. "About 2 hours at slow speed," Sophie replied. "Captain, there's something else. The signal has emotional markers in it. Whoever sent this is afraid. Very afraid." Jake closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about his sister Emma. She had died 10 years ago when her colony was attacked. He had been too far away to help her. He still dreamed about her sometimes, still heard her calling for him. He could not save Emma, but maybe he could save whoever was sending this signal. "We're going in," Jake said. "Captain," Danny started. "I know the risks, Danny, but someone needs help." "We're going." Jake's voice was firm. His crew knew that tone. The decision was made. The Spirit of Earth turned and headed into the nebula. The swirling clouds grew thicker around them. The ship's sensors struggled to see through the interference. Time moved slowly as they pushed deeper into the unknown. Sophie kept her eyes on the signal. It grew stronger as they got closer, but it was also getting weaker at the same time, like a heartbeat that was slowing down. "Captain, the signal is failing," Sophie said quietly. "Whatever is sending it won't last much longer." "How much longer?" Jake asked. "Hours, maybe less." "Danny, give me more speed." "Captain, if we go faster in this soup, we might hit something we can't see." "Do it anyway." The ship moved faster, shaking slightly as it pushed through the dense clouds of the nebula. Everyone on the bridge held their breath. The sensors showed nothing but swirling gas and the occasional asteroid. Then suddenly the sensors caught something big. "Captain," Danny shouted. "Dead ahead." "It's huge." Through the purple haze, a shape appeared. It was a ship, but unlike any ship Jake had ever seen. It was massive, easily 5 times the size of the Spirit of Earth. The hull was smooth and curved like it had been grown rather than built. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly with a blue light that pulsed like breathing. The ship was dead in space, floating among the asteroids. Pieces of debris drifted around it. Something terrible had happened here. "Life signs?" Jake asked. Sophie's fingers danced across her controls. "One, very faint." "It's small, Captain." Like a child, the bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at the alien ship. A child was alone on that dead vessel, dying in the darkness of space. Jake did not hesitate. He turned to his crew and started giving orders. "Danny, bring us alongside. Sophie, keep monitoring that life sign. I want to know the second anything changes. Get Dr. Chen to the airlock. We're going over there." "Captain, we don't know what's on that ship," Danny said. "It could be dangerous. It could be a trap." "There's a child dying on that ship," Jake said. "That's all I need to know. Get us ready to board." 30 minutes later, Jake stood in the airlock with 3 other crew members. Dr. Lisa Chen checked her medical equipment. She was a calm woman with steady hands and a sharp mind. If anyone could save an alien child, it was her. 2 security officers stood with them, carrying weapons just in case. Jake had his own pistol on his belt, though he hoped he would not need it. The airlock door opened onto the alien ship. The inside was beautiful and strange. The walls seemed to be made of crystal that glowed softly. The air was cold, and their breath made small clouds in front of their faces. "Life sign is 3 decks down," Sophie's voice came through their radios. "Follow the main corridor, then take the spiral ramp. You're looking for a large chamber." They moved through the dead ship. Everything was silent except for their footsteps. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. The deeper they went, the colder it got. Frost covered the walls like white paint. Finally, they reached the chamber. It was round and high, with a ceiling that looked like the night sky. In the center stood a tall cylinder made of clear material. Inside the cylinder was a small figure. Jake walked closer and stopped. His breath caught in his throat. It was a child. She was tiny, no bigger than a human 5-year-old. Her skin was smooth and changed colors slowly like oil on water. She had 4 small arms folded against her chest. Along her spine, crystal-like shapes grew, glowing with a dim amber light that flickered like a dying candle. Her eyes were closed and her breathing was shallow. Dr. Chen moved forward quickly, scanning the child and the cylinder with her equipment. "The chamber is failing," she said. "Life support is at 10%. Captain, if we don't get her out now, she'll be dead in minutes." "Can we move her safely?" Jake asked. "I don't know her biology. Moving her could kill her, but leaving her will definitely kill her." Jake looked at the small alien child. She looked so fragile, so alone. He thought of Emma again. He thought of all the children in the universe who needed someone to help them. "Get her out," Jake said. Dr. Chen worked quickly, finding the controls to open the cylinder. The clear material slid away with a soft hiss. The child collapsed forward and Jake caught her. She was light, like holding a bird. Her skin was cold against his suit. As he held her, the child's eyes opened. They were large and amber, glowing faintly in the dim light. She looked at Jake and he felt something strange. It was like a voice in his head, but not words, just feelings, fear, loneliness, and a tiny spark of hope. The child reached up with one small hand and touched his faceplate. The crystals on her spine pulsed once, twice, then went dark. "She's crashing," Dr. Chen said. "We need to move now." Jake wrapped the child carefully in a thermal blanket and held her close to his chest. They ran back through the dead ship, racing against time. Every second counted. The child's breathing got weaker and weaker. When they finally got back to the Spirit of Earth, Dr. Chen took the child to the medical bay. Jake stood outside, watching through the window as the doctor worked to save a life they knew nothing about. Sophie came to stand beside him. "Captain, I found something in the alien ship's computer. That vessel belongs to a species called the Velshara. They're one of the founding members of the Galactic Council." Jake looked at her. "What else?" "That ship was a royal transport. Captain, the child we just rescued is not just any Velshara. She's the heir to their throne, and someone tried to kill her." The medical bay was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines. Jake had not left the room for 2 days. He sat in a chair next to the bed where the small alien child lay, her chest rising and falling slowly. Dr. Chen had done everything she could, but the child's condition was still critical. Sophie had named her Lyra after studying the fragments of the Velshara language. It meant little light in their ancient tongue. The name seemed to fit. Even now, dying and far from home, the crystals on Lyra's spine still glowed faintly, like stars trying to shine through clouds. Jake watched the child sleep. Sometimes she made small sounds like crying in her dreams. When that happened, he would lean forward and speak softly to her. He told her about Earth, about oceans and mountains and cities that touched the sky. He told her about his sister Emma and how much he missed her. He did not know if Lyra could hear him, but it felt important to talk to her anyway. Dr. Chen came into the room carrying a tray of strange-looking food. She had been working night and day to figure out what Lyra needed to survive. The Velshara biology was unlike anything she had studied before. "How is she?" Jake asked, stable but weak. "Her body needs a very specific balance of nutrients. I think I figured it out, but it will take time." Dr. Chen sat down on the other side of the bed. "Captain, you should rest. You've been here for 48 hours straight. I'm fine, Jake said, though he was not. His eyes burned with tiredness and his back ached from sitting in the chair. But every time he tried to leave, he felt like Lyra needed him there. Dr. Chen smiled sadly. She understood. She had seen Jake lose his sister. She knew he carried that pain with him every day. Suddenly, Lyra's eyes opened. She looked around the room with fear, her 4 small arms moving weakly. The crystals on her spine flickered rapidly like a heartbeat that was too fast. Jake leaned forward quickly. It's okay. You're safe. Nobody will hurt you here. Lyra turned her amber eyes to him. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then slowly, the fear in her eyes faded. The crystals on her spine stopped flickering so fast. She reached out one hand and Jake took it gently. Her skin was warmer now than it had been on the dead ship. That was a good sign. Dr. Chen smiled. She knows you. Your presence calms her. Over the next few days, Lyra grew stronger. She still could not speak, but she watched everything with curious eyes. When Jake was in the room, she was calm. When he left, she became agitated, and the medical equipment would start beeping warnings. So Jake stayed. Sophie visited often, bringing reports and updates. She had been working hard to translate the data they had recovered from the royal transport. The picture that emerged was dark and dangerous. The ship was sabotaged, Sophie explained one evening while Jake sat with Lyra. Someone disabled the engines and life support, then left the ship to drift. They wanted everyone on board to die, and they wanted it to look like an accident. Who would do that? Jake asked. That's the scary part. The sabotage came from inside the ship. It was someone Lyra's family trusted. Sophie pulled up a holographic display showing star charts and political data. The Velshara are peacekeepers in the Galactic Council. They push for strict laws about weapons and military power. Some of the other council members don't like that. They think the Velshara have too much influence. So they decided to kill a child? Jake's voice was cold. Not just any child. The heir to the throne. Without Lyra, the Velshara royal line would be broken. Their political power would collapse. Sophie looked at the small alien sleeping in the bed. Captain, if these conspirators find out we have Lyra, they'll come for us. And they won't care that we're human. They'll destroy this ship to keep their secret safe. Jake was quiet for a long time. Then he said, we need to get Lyra home. To her mother. That won't be easy. The Velshara homeworld is weeks away, and we don't know who to trust in the council. For all we know, the conspirators have people everywhere. Then we trust no one but ourselves, Jake said. Set course for Velshara space, and Sophie, keep this quiet. Only the senior officers need to know what we're carrying. That night, as the spirit of Earth changed course, Jake stayed with Lyra. She slept peacefully now, her breathing steady. Sometimes she would reach out in her sleep, and Jake would hold her small hand until she settled again. He did not know it yet, but Lyra was dreaming. In her dreams, she saw her mother's face. The queen of the Velshara was tall and beautiful, with eyes that held the wisdom of ages. Lyra dreamed of her mother's arms around her, of feeling safe and loved. But then the dream would turn dark. She would see the attack, the cold of space, the moment she thought she would die. And then she would see Jake, the human who pulled her from darkness, the human whose voice made her feel safe. In her young mind, Jake had become something important. He was her protector. 3 days into their journey, Danny came to the medical bay looking worried. He always looked worried, but this was different. Captain, we have a problem. 3 ships just appeared on our sensors. They're tracking us, Jake stood up quickly. Human ships? No unknown design. And Captain, they're using cloaking technology. We can barely see them. They shouldn't know where we are, but they're following our exact course. Jake's blood ran cold. The conspirators had found them. Somehow they knew the spirit of Earth had rescued Lyra. How long until they reach us? Jake asked. 2 hours, maybe less. Captain, they're faster than us and their weapons are more advanced. If they want to destroy us, we can't stop them. Jake looked at Lyra sleeping peacefully in her bed. He thought about all the times in his life when he had faced impossible choices. This was just one more. But this time, he was not alone. This time, he had a crew that trusted him and a child who needed him. Get everyone to battle stations, Jake ordered. Danny, I need every bit of speed you can give me. Sophie, start sending out a distress call on all frequencies. Tell anyone who can hear us that we're under attack, and we're carrying the Velshara air. Maybe someone will help us. Or maybe we'll just tell the whole galaxy where we are, Danny said. We're already dead if those ships catch us. At least this way. Someone might know the truth about what happened to Lyra. The spirit of Earth pushed its engines to maximum power. The ship shook and groaned as it raced through space. Behind them, the three unknown vessels closed in like sharks smelling blood. In the medical bay, Lyra woke up. She felt the ship shaking. She felt the fear in the air. Her crystals began to glow brighter, and she made a small sound of distress. Dr. Chen tried to calm her, but Lyra pushed away. She looked around the room, searching. When she did not see Jake, she began to cry. Not human tears, but a soft keening sound that made the doctor's heart ache. Jake heard the sound over the ship's intercom. He was on the bridge trying to figure out how to save his ship and crew. But when he heard Lyra crying, something in him broke. He could not let her be afraid. Not again. He ran to the medical bay. When he entered, Lyra saw him and reached out all four of her small arms. Jake went to her and picked her up carefully, holding her close. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." Lyra pressed her face against his chest. Her crystals glowed steadily now, no longer flickering with panic. And then Jake felt it again. That strange sensation in his mind. Not words, but something deeper. He felt Lyra's fear, yes, but he also felt her trust. She believed he would protect her. She believed in him completely. The ship shook violently. The attackers had opened fire. Red lights flashed throughout the spirit of Earth as damage reports came in. Danny's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, shields are down to 40%. One more hit like that and we're finished." Jake held Lyra tighter. He would not let her die. Not like Emma. Not like all the other people he had failed to save. This time would be different. He carried Lyra to the bridge. The crew looked surprised to see their captain holding an alien child during a battle, but no one said anything. They all understood. They were not just fighting for their own lives anymore. They were fighting for her. Another explosion rocked the ship. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. The main lights went out, replaced by emergency red lighting. "Shields at 10%, Danny reported. "Captain, we're out of options. The next shot will breach the hull." Jake looked down at Lyra. Her amber eyes stared up at him with complete trust. He made a decision. "Sophie, open a channel to those ships. All frequencies." "Captain, what are you going to do?" "Do it." Sophie opened the channel. Jake took a deep breath and spoke to the enemy. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Spirit of Earth. I know you want to kill the child I'm holding. I know you sabotaged her ship and tried to murder her in cold space. But I also know something you don't know. Every second of this attack is being broadcast on all Galactic Council frequencies. The entire galaxy is watching you hunt down a child. So go ahead, fire your weapons, destroy us, but know that when you do, everyone will see what you really are." There was a long silence. The attacking ships stopped firing. They hung in space, clearly confused. Jake had called their bluff. They could kill the Spirit of Earth, but now the whole galaxy would know about it. Then something incredible happened. Sophie's console lit up with incoming messages. Dozens of them. Ships from all over nearby space had picked up their distress call in Jake's broadcast. Help was coming. The three attacking ships turned and fled, vanishing into the darkness before anyone could stop them. The bridge erupted in cheers. They had survived. Against all odds, they had survived. Jake sat down in his captain's chair, still holding Lyra. The small alien child had fallen asleep in his arms, exhausted by fear and relief. Her crystals glowed softly, peacefully. Sophie turned to him with tears in her eyes. "Captain, we're getting a direct transmission. It's from the Velshara homeworld. The Queen herself wants to speak with you." Jake looked at the sleeping child in his arms. Then he looked at his crew. These brave people who had risked everything for someone they did not even know. "Put her through," Jake said quietly. "Let's take Lyra home." The holographic image of the Velshara Queen filled the bridge of the Spirit of Earth. She was enormous, even through the transmission. Her opalescent skin shifted through colors that Jake had no words for. Her amber eyes were ancient and powerful, holding the weight of thousands of years. When she spoke, her voice was like music and thunder combined. "Captain Morrison," the Queen said. "You have my daughter." Jake stood with Lyra still in his arms. The small child was awake now, staring at the image of her mother. Her crystals glowed brightly, pulsing with emotion. "Yes, Your Majesty. We found her ship drifting in the Veiled Nebula. She was the only survivor. We rescued her." The Queen's eyes filled with tears, though they did not fall. "Is she well? She was badly hurt when we found her." Dr. Chen worked hard to save her life. She's recovering now, but she needs proper Velshara medical care. Jake held Lyra closer. Your Majesty, someone sabotaged your daughter's ship. They wanted her to die. We have evidence of a conspiracy within the Galactic Council. The Queen's face hardened. I know. The traitors revealed themselves when they attacked your vessel. Their ships were tracked. Justice will be swift and terrible, but first I must have my daughter back. Will you bring her to me, Captain Morrison? Jake looked down at Lyra. The small child reached up and touched his face with one hand. He felt that connection again, that strange bond they had formed. It hurt to think about letting her go, but she belonged with her mother. Of course, Your Majesty. We'll bring her home. The Queen's expression softened. You have done something remarkable, human. You risked everything for a child you did not know, from a species you had never met. I will not forget this. My personal guard will escort you safely to our homeworld. No harm will come to you or your crew. You have my word. The transmission ended. Within the hour, 6 massive Velshara warships appeared around the Spirit of Earth. They were beautiful and deadly, their hulls glowing with that same bioluminescent light. The warships formed a protective formation around Jake's small exploration vessel. The journey to the Velshara homeworld took 3 weeks. During that time, Lyra grew stronger every day. She spent most of her time with Jake, following him around the ship. She still could not speak human languages, but she communicated in other ways. Her crystals would glow different colors to show her emotions. When she was happy, they shone bright gold. When she was sad, they turned dim blue. Jake taught her about humans. He showed her pictures of Earth, of blue oceans and green forests. He taught her simple games and made her laugh with funny faces. The crew fell in love with the small alien child. Even Danny, who worried about everything, could not help but smile when Lyra toddled into the engine room to watch him work. But as they got closer to the Velshara homeworld, Jake felt a growing sadness. He knew what was coming. He would have to say goodbye to Lyra. She would go back to her royal life, surrounded by her own people, and he would probably never see her again. One night, Jake sat alone in the observation deck watching the stars. He heard soft footsteps behind him. It was Lyra. She climbed onto his lap and pressed her face against his chest just like she had done during the battle. You understand, don't you? Jake whispered. You know you're going home soon. Lyra's crystals pulsed with colors he had never seen before, blues and golds mixed together, sadness and happiness at the same time. She reached up and touched his face again, and Jake felt that connection one more time. In his mind, he saw images. Lyra showing him her memories of being scared and alone, then being saved by him. He saw how she felt about him. To her, he was not just her rescuer. He was family. Tears ran down Jake's face. I'll miss you too, little one. But you belong with your mother. You belong with your people. Finally, they arrived at the Velshara homeworld. It was the most beautiful planet Jake had ever seen. The surface glowed with billions of lights, entire cities that looked like they were made of crystal and starlight. Massive structures reached up into the clouds, connected by bridges of pure energy. The Spirit of Earth was guided to the royal palace. The palace itself was built on top of a mountain of crystal that rose from the ocean. It looked like a frozen waterfall of light, constantly shifting and changing colors. Jake, Sophie, Danny, and Dr. Chen prepared to take Lyra to meet her mother. The small child held Jake's hand tightly as they walked down the boarding ramp. Thousands of Velshara had gathered to witness the return of their princess. They stood silent, their crystals glowing in reverence. The royal guard led them through the palace. The halls were enormous, the ceilings so high that clouds formed near the top. Everything was beautiful and strange and a little bit frightening. Finally, they reached the throne room. It was a vast space that seemed to have no walls, just pillars of crystal that reached up into infinity. At the center, on a throne grown from a single massive crystal, sat the queen. She was even more magnificent in person than she had been in the hologram. She stood 12 feet tall, her presence filling the entire room. Her amber eyes found Lyra immediately, and Jake saw something in those ancient eyes that he recognized. It was the same thing he had felt when he found Lyra dying on the derelict ship. It was love mixed with terrible fear of loss. The queen rose from her throne and walked down the steps. The entire court watched in silence. This was history happening, and everyone knew it. Jake knelt down and released Lyra's hand. Go on, he whispered. Go to your mother, but Lyra did not move. She looked at the queen, then back at Jake. Her crystals flickered with confusion and fear. She had been through so much trauma. She had watched everyone she knew die on that ship. In her young mind, Jake was the one who made her feel safe. The Queen stopped walking. She knelt down, making herself smaller, less frightening. She held out her forearms in a gesture that was universal. She was calling her child home. Lyra looked at Jake one more time. He smiled at her through his tears. "It's okay. She loves you. She's been looking for you. Go." Slowly, hesitantly, Lyra walked toward her mother. Each step was uncertain, but as she got closer, something changed. Some deep memory awakened. She remembered this smell, this presence, this overwhelming love. Suddenly, she ran the last few steps and threw herself into her mother's arms. The Queen wrapped all 4 of her arms around her daughter and held her close. Her entire body shook with emotion. The crystals on her spine blazed with light so bright it was almost painful to look at. When she finally looked up at Jake, her eyes were filled with tears. "These tears," the Queen said, her voice thick with emotion, "are for you, Captain Morrison. You gave me back my heart. You gave me back my reason for living. I believed my daughter was dead. I had mourned her, but you refused to give up. You risked everything for a child who was not your own, from a species you had never met." The Queen stood, still holding Lyra, and walked toward Jake. She knelt before him, bringing herself down to his level. The entire court gasped. The Queen of the Velshara knelt before no one. But she knelt before this human. "You have shown me something I had forgotten in my thousands of years," the Queen said. "You have shown me that compassion and courage are not about power or technology or how long a species has existed. They are about the choices we make when no one is watching. They are about doing what is right even when it is hard." She reached out with one hand and touched Jake's face, just as Lyra had done so many times. Jake felt the psychic connection, but this time it was overwhelming. He felt the Queen's gratitude, her relief, her love for her daughter. He felt thousands of years of wisdom and sadness and hope, and he understood that this moment would change everything. The Queen stood and addressed the entire court. From this day forward, she proclaimed, "Humanity is under the protection of the Velshara. We enter into a permanent alliance with Earth and all her colonies. Any who threaten humanity threatens us. Any who aid humanity honors us." She turned back to Jake. "More than this, Captain Morrison, you and your crew are granted the title of Sharakal, Protectors of the Light. In our entire history, this honor has been given to only 12 others. You will have a place in our halls forever." Jake did not know what to say. He looked at his crew. Sophie was crying openly. Danny had his hand over his mouth in shock. Dr. Chen just smiled, her eyes wet with tears. "Your Majesty," Jake said quietly, "I did not do this for honors or alliances. I did it because it was right, because no child should die alone in the dark." "I know," the Queen said. "That is why you deserve this honor. That is why humanity deserves its place among the stars. You understand what many ancient species have forgotten, that every life matters, that protecting the weak is not weakness but the greatest strength." Lyra squirmed in her mother's arms and reached toward Jake. The Queen smiled and walked closer, allowing Lyra to touch Jake one more time. The small child's crystals glowed bright gold. Happy, safe, loved. Jake touched her small hand. "Take care, little light. Grow strong. Be happy." Lyra made a soft cooing sound. In Jake's mind, he felt her sending him an image. It was a promise. She would not forget him, ever. The ceremony continued for hours. The conspiracy was exposed in full. The traitors who had tried to kill Lyra were brought before the court in chains. They were high-ranking members of 3 different council species, all working together to weaken the Velshara influence. Their punishment would be severe, but Jake did not stay for all of it. He and his crew were given rooms in the palace, more luxurious than anything they had ever seen. But Jake could not sleep. He stood on a balcony overlooking the Crystal City, thinking about everything that had happened. Sophie found him there an hour before dawn. She stood beside him in comfortable silence for a while. Then she said, "You know this changes everything, right? Humanity just became one of the most protected species in the galaxy. The doors that were closed to us are now wide open." Jake nodded. "I know. But that's not what I'm thinking about. What are you thinking about?" "Emma, my sister. I couldn't save her. But I saved Lyra. And I keep wondering if Emma would be proud of me, if she would think I did the right thing." Sophie put her hand on his shoulder. "She would be proud. I'm sure of it. You took all that pain and grief and turned it into something beautiful. You saved a life. You changed the course of history. Emma would be so proud, Jake smiled. Maybe you're right. They stood together and watched the sun rise over the crystal city. It painted the sky in colors that did not exist on Earth, beautiful and strange and full of promise. In the palace, Lyra slept in her own bed for the first time in weeks. But even in sleep, her crystals glowed softly, and in her dreams, she saw the face of a human captain who had shown her that the universe could be kind. The spirit of Earth left the Velshara homeworld 3 days later. The crew was treated like heroes. They were given gifts beyond measure, technology that would advance human science by decades, and most importantly, the friendship of one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. As they prepared to leave, the Queen came to see them off personally. She brought Lyra with her. The small child had recovered fully now. She was stronger, healthier, and growing every day. When Lyra saw Jake, she broke free from her attendants and ran to him. He caught her and held her close one last time. She touched his face with all 4 of her small hands, and he felt that connection surge between them. She was saying goodbye, but also she was saying something else. Thank you. I love you. I will never forget. Jake's voice was thick with emotion when he spoke. Be good for your mother, little light. Grow up strong and kind. Make the universe better, just like you made me better. He handed Lyra back to the Queen. She wrapped her arms around her daughter, and her eyes met Jake's. No words were needed. They understood each other perfectly, one parent to another, one protector to another. The spirit of Earth lifted off from the royal palace and headed home to Earth. The crew was quiet for the first few hours of the journey. They had seen wonders. They had made history. But most of all, they had learned something important about themselves and about humanity. They had learned that humans had something special, not better technology, not stronger weapons, but something more important. They had compassion. They had the ability to see someone in need and help them, even when it was dangerous, even when it made no sense. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. And it was a gift that would change everything. 5 years passed. They were good years for humanity. The alliance with the Velshara opened doors that had been closed for decades. Human ships were welcome in parts of the galaxy where they had never been allowed before. Human scientists worked alongside alien researchers on projects that pushed the boundaries of knowledge. Human children grew up learning about dozens of alien species in their schools. Jake Morrison was no longer a simple exploration captain. He had been promoted to admiral and given command of humanity's new diplomatic fleet. The spirit of Earth had been retired and placed in a museum on Mars. A symbol of the day everything changed for humanity. But even with all his new responsibilities, Jake never forgot about Lyra. He thought about her often. He wondered if she remembered him, or if he had become just a faded memory from her early childhood. The Queen sent messages occasionally, updating him on Lyra's progress. She was growing fast, learning everything a Velshara princess needed to know. She was happy. She was safe. That was enough for Jake. Or so he told himself. Then one day, Jake received an unusual message. It came directly from the Velshara royal palace, marked with the highest priority seal. The Queen was inviting him to return to the Velshara homeworld for an important ceremony. She did not say what the ceremony was for, only that his presence was requested. Jake's heart beat faster as he read the message. He knew he should be professional about this. It was probably just some political event, something where his presence as a human admiral would be symbolic, but a small part of him hoped that maybe, just maybe, he would get to see Lyra again. He took his new flagship, the Horizon, to the Velshara homeworld. Sophie came with him, now as chief diplomatic officer. Danny had retired from space travel to teach engineering at the Academy on Earth, but he sent his regards. Dr. Chen was running a major hospital on one of the outer colonies, saving lives every day. The journey took 2 weeks. Jake spent most of that time reading reports and attending to his duties, but at night, he would stand in the observation deck and think about the small alien child he had rescued so long ago. She would be almost grown now by Velshara standards. She would probably not even recognize him. When they arrived at the Velshara homeworld, Jake was surprised by the reception. The entire planet seemed to be celebrating. Ships filled the space around the planet. Coming from all corners of the galaxy, banners of light streamed through the sky. Music played on every frequency. "What's going on?" Jake asked Sophie as they prepared to land. Sophie checked her console. "According to the planetary network, this is the coming-of-age ceremony for Princess Lyra. In Velshara culture, it marks the moment when she officially becomes an adult and takes her place in the royal court." Jake's breath caught. Lyra's coming-of-age ceremony. That was why the Queen had invited him. He would get to see her again, not as a frightened child, but as a young woman stepping into her future. The Horizon landed at the royal palace, in the same spot where the Spirit of Earth had landed 5 years ago. The memories came flooding back. Jake remembered carrying Lyra down that ramp, her small hand holding his so tightly. He remembered the fear and the hope and the overwhelming relief when she was finally reunited with her mother. A royal escort met them at the landing pad. They were led through the palace past the same crystal halls and soaring chambers. But this time the palace was filled with guests from across the galaxy. Diplomats, scientists, artists, warriors, all had come to witness this important moment. Jake was taken to a private chamber to wait. The ceremony would begin in a few hours. He paced the room nervously, straightening his uniform for the 100th time. He was an admiral. He had commanded fleets and negotiated treaties. But right now he felt like a nervous father waiting to see his daughter. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door opened and the Queen entered. She looked the same as she had 5 years ago, eternal and powerful. But when she saw Jake, her face softened into something approaching a smile. "Admiral Morrison," she said warmly. "Or may I call you Jake as I think of you?" "Of course, Your Majesty." Jake bowed respectfully. The Queen waved her hand dismissively. "Please, no formalities. Not between us. Not after what you have done for my family." She moved to the window looking out over the Crystal City. "I wanted to speak with you before the ceremony. To prepare you. Prepare me for what? For Lyra. She has asked about you every day for 5 years. She has studied human culture, learned human languages, read human history. She has never forgotten you, Jake. You saved her life, but you also gave her something more. You showed her what it means to be kind, to be brave, to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Jake felt his throat tighten. "How is she?" "She is magnificent. Strong, intelligent, compassionate. She will make a great queen someday. But she is also still the child you rescued. Inside her brave exterior, she still remembers the fear, the darkness, the moment she thought she would die. And she remembers the human who pulled her from that darkness." The Queen turned to face Jake. "She wants to see you. Before the ceremony, I told her I would ask if you were willing. Of course. I would be honored." The Queen smiled. "Come then. She is waiting." They walked through the palace to a private garden. It was a place of incredible beauty, with plants from 1,000 worlds growing in perfect harmony. Streams of water flowed upward instead of down, defying gravity in ways that seemed like magic. At the center of the garden stood a young Velshara woman. Jake stopped and stared. It was Lyra, but also not Lyra. She had grown tall, nearly 8 feet now. Her opalescent skin was more vibrant than he remembered, shifting through colors with each emotion. The crystals on her spine had grown as well, forming an elegant pattern that glowed with steady amber light. She wore the formal robes of a Velshara princess, silver and gold that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. But her eyes were the same. Those large amber eyes that had looked at him with such trust all those years ago. Lyra turned and saw him. For a moment she just stared. Then, in perfect human English, she said, "Jake." Her voice was musical, like wind chimes in a breeze, but there was also something in it that made Jake's heart ache. It was the voice of someone who had been waiting a very long time. "Hello, little light," Jake said softly. Lyra's eyes filled with tears, the same tears he had seen in her mother's eyes 5 years ago. And then she did something that shocked everyone present. She ran to him, just like she had done as a child, and threw her arms around him. She was much bigger now, and Jake staggered slightly from the impact. But he held her, this young woman who had once been a dying child, in his arms. Lyra pressed her face against his shoulder and cried, not from sadness but from relief and joy and 5 years of missing someone who had been so important to her. "I thought you would not come," Lyra said between sobs. "I thought you had forgotten about me." "Never," Jake whispered. "I could never forget you. I think about you all the time. They stood like that for a long time while the queen watched with tears streaming down her own face. Finally, Lyra pulled back and looked at Jake. Her crystals glowed bright gold, the color of pure happiness. "I have so much to tell you," she said, smiling through her tears. "So much has happened. I have learned so many things. I studied human culture because I wanted to understand you better. I read about Earth, about your people's history. You are remarkable, you know. Your whole species is remarkable." Jake laughed. "We try our best. But look at you. You've grown so much. You're not the little child I remember." "No," Lyra said, "but I am still that child in here." She touched her chest. "I still remember the darkness. I still remember being so afraid. And I remember your voice telling me that everything would be okay. You were right. Everything was okay. Because of you." The queen approached them. "It is time, my daughter. The ceremony will begin soon." Lyra nodded, but she did not let go of Jake's hand. "Will you stand with me during the ceremony? I know it is unusual, but I want you there. You are family to me, the most important family." Jake looked at the queen. She smiled and nodded. "It would be my honor," Jake said. The ceremony was held in the great throne room. Thousands of beings filled the space, representing hundreds of species from across the galaxy. They had come to witness the coming of age of the Velshara princess who had survived death and brought humanity into the galactic community. Lyra stood at the center of the room, radiant in her ceremonial robes. The queen spoke words in the ancient Velshara language, blessing her daughter and welcoming her into adulthood. But when it came time for Lyra to speak, she surprised everyone. She spoke in multiple languages, first in Velshara, honoring her own people, then in the common galactic tongue, addressing all the assembled species, and finally in English, looking directly at Jake. "5 years ago," Lyra said, her voice clear and strong, "I was lost in the darkness. I thought I would die alone and afraid. But a human captain found me. He did not know me. He did not know my species. He had no reason to risk his life and his ship for me, but he did it anyway. Because that is what humans do. They see someone in need and they help. They see a child in danger and they protect." She turned to address the entire assembly. "Today, as I take my place as an adult in our society, I make a vow. I vow to be like that human captain. To show compassion even when it is difficult. To be brave even when I am afraid. To protect those who cannot protect themselves. This is the lesson humanity taught me. This is the lesson I will carry for the rest of my life." The crowd erupted in applause. Beings of all kinds stood and showed their respect. But Jake barely noticed. He was looking at Lyra, this magnificent young woman who had once been a frightened child in his arms. He felt proud in a way he had never felt before. After the ceremony, there was a great celebration. Music filled the palace. Food and drink from 100 worlds were served. But Jake and Lyra slipped away to the garden where they had met earlier. They sat by one of the upward flowing streams and talked for hours. Lyra told him about her studies, about the politics of the Velshara court, about her dreams for the future. Jake told her about Earth, about the changes humanity had experienced, about his work as an admiral. But mostly they just enjoyed being together again. The bond they had formed 5 years ago had not faded. If anything, it had grown stronger. As the night grew late, Lyra leaned her head on Jake's shoulder just like she used to do as a child. "Jake," she said quietly, "thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for trusting me, little light." They sat in comfortable silence watching the stars above the crystal city, and in that moment Jake realized something. He had spent 5 years thinking he had saved Lyra, but the truth was more complicated than that. She had saved him too. She had given him purpose. She had shown him that the grief he carried over losing Emma could be transformed into something beautiful. He could not save Emma, but he had saved Lyra, and in doing so, he had helped save himself. The queen found them there an hour later. She smiled at the sight of them together. "You must stay longer," she said to Jake. "Lyra has so much she wants to show you. I would like that very much," Jake replied. "Good." The queen sat down beside them. "Because you are part of our family now, Jake Morrison. You always have been. You always will be." And so Jake stayed on the Velshara homeworld for 3 more weeks. He and Lyra spent every day together, making up for lost time. They explored the Crystal City, visited ancient Velshara temples, and shared stories late into the night. When it was finally time for Jake to leave, Lyra walked with him to his ship. She was calm now, not crying like she had been when they first reunited. But her crystals glowed with soft blues and golds, sadness mixed with love. "You will come back," she said. It was not a question but a statement always, Jake promised. "Whenever you need me, I will come." Lyra hugged him one last time. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything, for saving my life, for showing me what kindness looks like, for being my protector when I had no one else." "Thank you for trusting me," Jake said. "Thank you for reminding me why we do what we do, why we explore the stars, why we reach out to the unknown. It's not about conquering or claiming. It's about connecting. It's about helping. It's about making the universe a little bit better than we found it." Lyra stepped back and placed one hand over her heart in a Velshara gesture of deep respect. "You have made my universe better, Jake Morrison, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to do the same for others." Jake boarded the horizon and lifted off from the Velshara homeworld. As the planet grew smaller behind him, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. From a simple exploration captain to an admiral, from a man haunted by grief to a man who had found peace. And it had all started with a distress signal in the veiled nebula, with a choice to investigate when everyone said he should not, with a decision to save a life when no one would have blamed him for walking away. That was the power of compassion. That was the gift humanity had to offer the galaxy. Not weapons, not technology, but the simple, profound choice to care about others, to protect the vulnerable, to stand up for what was right even when it was hard. As the horizon jumped to faster-than-light speed heading home to Earth, Jake smiled. He would see Lyra again. Many times over the years to come, they would remain friends for life, bound together by that moment 5 years ago when a human captain decided that every life mattered, even an alien child he had never met. That decision had changed everything, for Lyra, for humanity, for the galaxy, and Jake would never regret it. Not for a single moment. 20 years passed. They were years of great change for both humanity and the galaxy at large. The alliance between humans and the Velshara had transformed galactic politics. Other species that had once looked down on humanity now sought their friendship. Human culture spread across the stars, mixing with alien traditions to create something new and beautiful. Jake Morrison was now in his 60s. He had retired from active service 5 years ago, but he stayed busy. He taught at the Starfleet Academy on Earth, training the next generation of explorers and diplomats. He wrote books about his experiences, and every few months he would receive a message from the Velshara homeworld, from Lyra. Lyra had grown into everything the Queen had hoped she would be. She was wise, compassionate, and strong. She served as her mother's chief advisor and had become beloved by her people. More importantly, she had never forgotten the lessons Jake had taught her. She worked tirelessly to promote peace and understanding between species. Many said that when she became queen, she would be the greatest ruler the Velshara had ever known. One autumn day on Earth, Jake sat in his garden watching the leaves fall. He was thinking about the past as old men often do. He thought about all the choices he had made, all the places he had been, all the lives he had touched. And he thought about Emma, his sister. The pain of losing her had faded over the years, softened into a gentle sadness rather than the sharp grief it once was. A notification chimed on his communication device. It was a priority message from the Velshara homeworld. Jake's heart skipped a beat. Priority messages were rare. Something important had happened. He opened the message. It was from Lyra herself. "Jake," she had written, "something wonderful has happened. I need you to come, please, it is important." Jake did not hesitate. He packed a bag and caught the next transport to the Velshara homeworld. The journey took 3 days, and he spent most of that time wondering what could be so important. Was something wrong? Had something happened to the Queen? To Lyra? His mind raced with possibilities. When he arrived at the royal palace, he was met by familiar faces. The palace staff greeted him warmly. They all knew who he was. Admiral Morrison, the human who had saved their princess. The human who had changed everything. He was taken to the private gardens where he and Lyra had first reunited all those years ago. The gardens were more beautiful than ever, filled with flowers from 1,000 worlds, and there, standing by the upward-flowing stream, was Lyra. She had aged well. The Velshara lived for thousands of years, so 20 years was nothing to her. She looked almost the same as she had at her coming-of-age ceremony. But there was something different in her eyes, a depth of experience, a weight of responsibility, and something else. Joy. Pure, radiant joy. "Jake," she said, rushing to him and embracing him tightly. "You came, of course I came. Your message said it was important. Is everything okay? Is your mother well?" Lyra laughed. It was a sound like bells. "Everything is more than okay. Mother is well, and I have something to show you." She took his hand and led him deeper into the garden. They came to a secluded area where a small pavilion stood. And there, in the shade of the pavilion, Jake saw something that made his heart stop. A tiny Velshara child lay sleeping in an ornate cradle. She was perhaps 6 months old, with opalescent skin that shimmered with soft colors. Her 4 small arms were curled against her chest. The crystals on her spine were just beginning to grow, glowing with a faint amber light. Jake stared at the child, then at Lyra. He could not find words. "Her name is Kira," Lyra said softly. "She is my daughter. Your granddaughter, if you will allow me to call you that." Tears filled Jake's eyes. He moved closer to the cradle and looked down at the sleeping child. She was beautiful, perfect. And in that moment he saw Lyra as she had been 25 years ago, small and vulnerable and precious. "She is beautiful," Jake whispered. "Absolutely beautiful." Lyra came to stand beside him. "I wanted you to be the first to meet her. Outside of our immediate family, you are the most important person in my life. You saved me. You gave me a future, and now I have given that future to her." Jake reached down and gently touched the child's tiny hand. Kira stirred in her sleep and wrapped one small hand around his finger. The crystals on her spine pulsed gently, and Jake felt that familiar connection, that psychic bond that he had first felt with Lyra all those years ago. In his mind, he felt the child's presence, not thoughts or words, but emotions. Warmth, safety, love, and something else. Recognition. Somehow this tiny child knew who he was. Lyra had told her stories about him, about the human who had saved her mother. "I told her about you," Lyra said, as if reading his thoughts. "Every day I tell her the story of how a brave human captain found her mother in the darkness and brought her home. She knows you, Jake, in the way that children know the stories that shape them." The queen entered the pavilion, moving quietly so as not to wake the child. She smiled at Jake with the same warmth she had shown him so many years ago. "Welcome, Jake Morrison," she said. "Welcome to meet the next generation. The generation that will grow up in a galaxy you helped create. A galaxy where compassion and courage matter more than power and fear." Jake could not speak. He just stood there, holding the tiny hand of this child, thinking about the strange journey that had brought him to this moment. From a distress signal in a nebula to this garden on an alien world, from saving one life to changing the course of galactic history, Kira opened her eyes. They were amber, just like her mother's, just like her grandmother's. She looked up at Jake with those ancient, knowing eyes. And then she smiled. A tiny, perfect smile that made Jake's heart overflow with joy. "Would you like to hold her?" Lyra asked. Jake nodded. Lyra carefully lifted Kira from the cradle and placed her in Jake's arms. The child was light, so light. She looked up at him with curiosity and wonder. Her crystals glowed bright gold. The color of happiness. The color of love. "Hello, little one," Jake whispered. "I'm your grandfather, Jake. Not by blood, but by choice. By love. And I will always be here for you, just like I was here for your mother." Kira reached up with one small hand and touched Jake's face. The same gesture her mother had made so many times. And in that touch, Jake felt a connection that transcended species, time, and space. This child was his family, not because of genetics, but because of something deeper, because love has no boundaries, because family is what we choose to make it. Jake stayed on the Velshara homeworld for 2 months. He spent every day with Lyra and Kira, watching the child grow and learn. He told Kira stories about Earth, about oceans and mountains and cities, the same stories he had told her mother 25 years ago. One evening, as the 3 of them sat in the garden watching the stars come out, Lyra said, "Mother is planning to step down soon. She wants me to become queen." Jake looked at her. "Are you ready?" "I think so." "Mother has taught me well. But more than that, you taught me well. You showed me what it means to lead with compassion, to make decisions based on what is right, not what is easy, To protect those who cannot protect themselves. You will be a great queen, Jake said. The best your people have ever had, Lyra smiled. And when I am queen, I want to establish something new. A program that brings together young people from different species. They will learn about each other's cultures, work together on projects, and build friendships that will last their lifetimes. I want to call it the Morrison Initiative. After you. Jake felt his throat tighten. You honor me too much. No, Lyra said firmly. I honor you exactly as much as you deserve. You changed my life. You changed the galaxy. And I want to make sure that future generations never forget the lesson you taught us. That reaching across the darkness to help another is the greatest thing any being can do. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Little Kira slept peacefully in her mother's arms, and Jake thought about all the people who had shaped his life. Emma, who he could not save. Lyra, who he could. And now Kira, who represented the future, a future full of hope. When it was finally time for Jake to return to Earth, the farewell was bittersweet. He hugged Lyra tightly and kissed little Kira on the forehead. The child's crystals glowed, and Jake felt her sending him a simple message. A promise that she would remember him, that she would carry his lessons forward into her own life. I will come back, Jake promised. As often as I can. I know you will, Lyra said. You always keep your promises. The Queen came to see him off. She took both of his hands in hers and looked into his eyes. Thank you, she said simply, for everything, for giving me back my daughter, for showing the galaxy what humanity truly represents, for being exactly who you are. Thank you for trusting me, Jake replied, for letting me be part of your family, for showing me that grief can be transformed into joy, that loss can become love. Jake returned to Earth, but he kept his promise. He visited the Velshara homeworld several times a year. He watched Kira grow from an infant into a toddler, then into a young child. He was there when she took her first steps. He was there when she spoke her first words. And he was there when, she asked him, in perfect human English, to tell her the story of how he had saved her mother. Years continued to pass. Lyra became queen, just as everyone knew she would. She ruled with wisdom and compassion, and the Velshara civilization flourished under her leadership. The Morrison Initiative became a reality, bringing together young beings from across the galaxy and creating bonds of friendship that strengthened the entire galactic community. Humanity continued to grow and prosper. More human colonies spread across the stars. Human art, music, and philosophy influenced alien cultures, just as alien traditions influenced humanity. The dream of a peaceful, interconnected galaxy moved closer to reality with each passing year. And through it all, Jake remained a constant presence in the lives of Lyra and Kira. He was grandfather, friend, teacher, and protector. He told them stories of Earth. He taught them about human history and culture. And most importantly, he showed them, through his actions and his choices, what it meant to be good. On his 80th birthday, Jake sat in his garden on Earth, surrounded by friends and family. Sophie was there, older now, but still sharp as ever. Danny had traveled from his home on Mars. Dr. Chen came all the way from her colony hospital. And through holographic transmission, Lyra and Kira joined the celebration. Kira, now a young teenager, spoke to the assembled group. She spoke about Jake, about the man who had saved her mother and changed the galaxy. She spoke with eloquence and passion, her voice clear and strong. Jake Morrison taught us that heroism is not about being the strongest or the smartest, Kira said. It is about being kind when kindness is difficult. It is about being brave when bravery is frightening. It is about choosing to care about others even when it costs us something. This is the lesson humanity has given to the galaxy. And it is a lesson I will carry for the rest of my life. Jake wiped tears from his eyes. He looked around at all the people who had been part of his journey. His crew, who had trusted him when he made a crazy decision to investigate a distress signal. His friends, who had stood by him through the years, and his family, both human and alien, who he loved with all his heart. Later that night, after everyone had left, Jake sat alone in his garden one more time. He looked up at the stars, thinking about Emma. He had spent so many years missing her, grieving for her. But now he could think of her with peace instead of pain. "I hope I made you proud, Em," he whispered to the stars. "I hope you know that I never forgot you, that everything I did partly for you, to honor your memory, to make sure that no one else had to feel the pain I felt when I lost you." The stars did not answer, but Jake felt, in his heart, that somewhere in the vastness of space, Emma was smiling. She was proud of him, and she understood what he had learned through all his years of exploration and service, that life is not about the losses we suffer. It is about what we do with those losses, how we transform grief into compassion, how we turn pain into purpose, how we take our broken pieces and use them to help heal others. Jake Morrison had lost his sister, but he had saved a princess. He had helped build a better galaxy. He had shown that humanity's greatest strength was not technology or weapons, but the simple choice to care about others, to reach out across the darkness and offer help to those who need it. This was humanity's gift to the galaxy. This was their legacy among the stars, and it would endure long after Jake was gone, carried forward by people like Lyra and Kira and all the young beings who learned from the Morrison Initiative. The cycle would continue. Generation after generation, beings from all across the galaxy would learn the lesson that a human captain had taught on a cold day in the Veiled Nebula, that every life matters, that compassion is strength, that we are all connected, regardless of species or origin. And somewhere in the royal palace on the Velshara homeworld, a young alien girl looked up at the stars and thought about the human grandfather who had saved her mother. She dreamed of the day when she would be old enough to explore the galaxy herself, to meet new species, to help those in need, to carry forward the lessons she had learned, because that is what family does. They pass on their wisdom. They teach by example. They show the next generation how to be better than they were. And in this way, the story of Jake Morrison and the alien princess he saved would echo through the ages, not as a tale of heroism, but as a simple reminder of something important, something that every being in the galaxy needed to remember, that in the vast darkness of space, in the cold and lonely reaches between the stars, there is light, there is warmth, there is love, and sometimes all it takes is one person making one choice to care about another, one captain hearing a distress signal and deciding to investigate, one human seeing a dying child and refusing to leave her behind, one act of compassion that changes everything. That is the power of caring. That is the strength of kindness. That is humanity's gift to the galaxy. And it all started with a human captain, an alien child, and the simple decision to do what was right, even when it was hard, even when it was dangerous, even when no one would have blamed him for walking away. Jake Morrison chose to care. And in doing so, he proved that humanity deserved its place among the stars, not because they were stronger or smarter than anyone else, but because they understood something fundamental about the universe, that we are all connected, that every life has value, that the greatest adventures are not about discovering new worlds or new technologies. They are about discovering each other, about building bridges instead of walls, about reaching out instead of pulling back. This was the lesson. This was the story. And it would be told for thousands of years, long after Jake was gone, long after Lyra, long after Kira and her children and her children's children. The story of the day an alien queen's eyes brimmed with tears as a human brought back her lost child. The story of how one act of kindness changed the galaxy forever. The story of why humanity, despite all their flaws and limitations, earned their place among the stars because they cared. And that made all the difference.